by step. He's taking this very seriously, which leads us to be able to say that our creative problem-solving methods have ideological roots. Sure, at the surface level, fine, they're for solving problems, but they're also for proving that the individualistic capitalist approach is just better than the collectivist communist approach. Now, all right, so it's reasonable at this point to ask, is there even such a thing as a collectivist design methodology? What would that even look like, right? Is it Bauhaus? Is that what we're going to do? So, Genrich Altshuler is our guy. I say he's the other patent clerk genius, the first one being Einstein. Genrich was born in Uzbekistan. He lived most of his life in Azerbaijan, and he spent 1950 to 1954 in a labour camp. His first career was as a patent clerk, and he realised that there were patterns in the patents that came across his desk. And I have been terrified of saying patterns in the patents ever since I wrote this. It's very difficult. So where our beloved Guilford started with analysing creativity in people, Altshuler, at almost exactly the same time, started by analysing creativity in inventions. Thousands of them. Okay, are you ready for the next bit? Because this is going to be a real trip, all right? Okay. So, based on what he found in the patents, he proposed that there were 40 categories that all inventions fall into, and they're all on this slide, okay? His idea was that if you can work out what category your problem is in, you can use the category to find the solution. This system is called TRIZ, T-R-I-Z in English. We're not going to do TRIZ, we're just using this as an example of alternatives. If we take, for example, category 1, that's division or segmentation. An example might be replacing a delivery van with a car and a trailer. Or in project management, just breaking a project into smaller, more manageable pieces. TRIZ is still around, it doesn't get much credit. There's a lot of it in things like Six Sigma. Okay. All right, ask me how this might be connected to David Bowie. Yeah. Oh, I've got more. Okay, so, step back. We've already mentioned that Osborne's brainstorming has 3 steps, not 1. Let's have a look at one of his complaints about the misuse of brainstorming, which started the minute that brainstorming did. So he says, too many have erroneously regarded group brainstorming as a complete problem-solving process, whereas it is only one of several phases of idea finding, and idea finding is only one of several phases of creative problem-solving. What's he going on about? Our last person, Sidney Parnes, the Invisible Man. Oh, Parnes. All right, Osborne is a businessman. Parnes, like Guilford, is an academic. He is also really hard to find information about outside of his books, which is a bit of a hassle because some of the books are impossible to find, which is the downside of investigating something that you already knew was a lost history when you started. Now, I can't get this book anywhere. I can tell you that if you've ever encountered a how might we question, the first one we have evidence of is in this book, which was written by Parnes in 1967, not IDEO. You can ask me for the evidence of that as well. So, Osborne dies in 1966, but before he dies, he works with Parnes on the other phases of creative problem solving, okay? Unfortunately, Parnes does not have the marketing genius that Osborne has, so he's an academic. So Osborne being dead at this stage, the Osborne-Parnes creative solving method never really gets super famous. It's kind of hard to find. I can't track down the original one very well, but it's got to be 1966 or thereabouts. Are we ready? Do you want to see it? Yep, cool. Okay, here it is. I love the gasps. Magic. Let's have a look. What have we got? We start with problem sensitivity, which is a character attribute identified by Guilford, because he's still here. We move on to meso-objective, and then we have these 5 diverge, converge process elements. Fact-finding, problem-finding, idea-finding, solutions-finding, acceptance-finding. Action, new challenge, and a beautifully placed, etc. Okay. All right. Remember this? Yeah? Same shape. Look at that. Okay. Remember this? Yeah? Hey, the hexagon's taking them out. Look at that. So we find that those 5 stages of the design thinking process have pretty much direct analogies in the Osborne palms. Empathize to fact finding, define to problem finding, ideate to idea finding, prototype to solution finding, and test to acceptance finding. It's 1-to-1. So, there. So at the beginning, do you remember how our design council person said, of course, kite-shaped design process models have been referenced as far back as the 1960s? There you go, there you have it. The double diamond and the IDEO design thinking process are very different, but they have the same root. And it is the Osborne-Parnes creative solving process, which draws from Osborne's brainstorming process, which draws from Guilford's diverge-converge model of creativity. Right. I'll be honest with you, I feel like that's a pretty solid mic drop moment. We could stop there, right? Everyone here would go home happy, but, well, I hope so. But we're not going to do that. We're going to go a little bit further, just a little bit, because as I was researching this talk, I stumbled on this throwaway line somewhere that suggested that Osborne maybe got the idea from somewhere else. And we already noted, do you remember how we noted how weird it was that a hyper-capitalist like Osborne would come up with an inherently collectivist, collaborative process which relies on withholding judgment? Weird, right? Yeah? Well, got me hunting. The hunt took me to the 1963 edition of Applied Imagination. I'm going to read it to you. It says, this kind of conference, brainstorming, is not entirely new. A similar procedure is known to have been used in India for more than 400 years as part of the technique of Hindu teachers working with religious groups. The Indian name for this method is Prabhashana. Pri means outside yourself and Bhashana means question. Interesting. Makes sense. Indian cultures are pretty high context cultures. If you were going to find this approach anywhere, it would make sense to find it there. So I got out my Google and I started Googling Prabhashana. I didn't find a damn thing. But fortunately, I know a designer in Mumbai called Priyanka. I asked her, she said, I think this might be Sanskrit. Now, Sanskrit is an ancient language, but it's readable-ish for modern-day Hindi speakers. Interesting. As it happens, I listened to a podcast about the design industry in India, so I found the host on Twitter, a guy called Kawal Oberoi, and I told him what Priyanka said, and he said, ooh, yeah, I think that might mean like lateral thinking or lateral questioning, but he wasn't entirely sure. So he put me on to this guy he knew called Abhishek, and Abhishek is a lecturer in Indic languages, and he saw the words Prabhashana, and he said, in my opinion, that word is Sanskrit pariprashna, which is in... Yes, someone knows. Okay, so which is inquiry, interrogation, or question. He referred to me a book. The book was about religion. Back to Osborne, like he was saying, interesting. But in my culture, we don't talk religion with professional peers, and these are my professional peers, so I kind of cut the cord at that stage. But then I remember that I actually have a friend who was raised in the Hare Krishnas. So I asked her, and she said that I have heard it used in the context of the process of inquiry between a disciple and a guru, in that it is the duty of a disciple not to blindly accept, but to make respectful inquiries, not so as to challenge, but as to understand. Interesting. And she asked if I wanted her to ask her friend who studies the Vedas full time, and I said, yeah, I definitely do. That friend's name is Rob. Rob went out, he checked the source text for me, and based on what Rob found, I now believe that the roots of brainstorming, and therefore so many of our design processes today, are not in the 1950s America at all. They come from the Bhagavad Gita, right? Which is therefore about 1,200 years old. So I could have skipped the entire trajectory of that last bit by saying, it turns out.